Hey everybody, I'm going to talk to you today about the four anthropological lenses and kind of how they work. The four lenses are identity, truth, evil, and the unseen. Everybody, everywhere, no matter what culture you come from, no matter where you live, no matter what your address is, has fundamental, cognitively held lenses. And these lenses shape the way they think about and understand who they are, identity. They understand and shape the way they think about truth. What is truth? How am I supposed to interact with truth? They also have these fundamentally cognitively held lenses that inform them about what evil is. What is evil? As Christians, we would say the fall and the outworking of the fall, but just people across the board, Christians, non Christians, nonetheless, we have lenses that inform us about evil and what it is and how we're supposed to think about it, how we're supposed to interact with it. Also, every person has a deeply held lens that tells them what the unseen is, what spiritual things are, maybe, and how they should interact with, minimize, or ignore potentially those things. Before we get into talking about each one of these four lenses, I kind of want to talk more about this idea of lenses itself. Lenses that you guys are probably super familiar with would be eyeglasses, like your glasses. You put them on every day unless you've lost them, and they help you see things. Without them, it's hard to see, right? And you're constantly saying, "Where are my glasses?" But once you put them on, you kind of forget about them. They're just there. And you go about your entire day, if you're used to wearing them, you've been wearing them for years, you don't even know they're there until they get bumped or until you lose them. A magnifying glass is much different. It's not something that exists kind of in the background that constantly helps you and you're not aware of it. A magnifying glass is usually something you keep in a drawer somewhere in your house, and you go and you pick it up and you use it to very intentionally focus on a particular object. The four anthropological lenses function as both eyeglasses and a magnifying glass. Everybody has them in the form of eyeglasses, but some people, when they've been trained to work cross culturally, to work interculturally, use them also as magnifying glasses. They take out the identity lens and they say, wait, let me take off my own glasses and think about how I think about identity. Let me think about how this particular group of people that I want to interact with and relate with, I want to lead, I want to minister to maybe. How do they think about identity? All of a sudden, these eyeglasses lens of identity that's functioning all the time, they use as a magnifying glass to investigate themselves and to investigate others. Same with truth, evil, and the unseen. So during this course, as we develop these anthropological lenses and talk about and explain each one, we'll be practicing using them intentionally as investigative magnifying glasses. So you can figure out the difference between yourself and the people that you want to relate with, to minister to disciple, to lead and shepherd. What do they think about this particular aspect of life? And what's that difference? All of a sudden, then, if I can understand and explain the difference between me and them, or us and them, then my stresses get lowered and I can be more compassionate and more understanding with respect to somebody else who's very different from me. So here's these four lenses, and I don't want to trip you up too much, but actually, the first lens of identity tells you a lot about a particular people or about a particular individual. That lens of identity usually helps us also determine how we think about others. Usually, the way I look at myself is the way I also look at others. How do we think about leaders? What are our expectations of leaders? How do we think about and use or interact with time? What is important and how do we treat important things? What, what is the purpose of conflict? And how do we do conflict appropriately in our culture? How about territory? And I'm not necessarily meaning like the borders of your property or your rental house or your whatever you might own. I'm more talking about space. How do you view personal space, or how do you view orientation within reality? It's a very important topic that people can do and interact with very differently. And it can be very confusing if you go into another culture who thinks about territory differently than you. What about differences? What about difference? How do we understand and interact with? What's our bandwidth for difference? Can we deal with a whole lot of differences, or are differences fairly black and white? What about wealth and how wealth is gained, used, and allotted? All of these, all of these 8 sub lenses of identity all tend to hinge on how you form your concept of the self. So we'll spend a lot of time moving forward looking at identity and its 8 sub lenses, and then we'll get into truth, evil, and the unseen. But until then, that's a brief overview of the 4 anthropological lenses.